thanks for taking the time to join us to discuss the OAK-D Lite Kickstarter. So to start off with, who are you and what do you do?
Thanks, Brandon. For everyone who doesn't know me, my name is Ritesh Kanjee from the YouTube channel Augmented Startups, mainly teaching augmented reality, computer vision, and robotics.
It's so cool. It's cool that that's a thing now, right? That you'd say, those are the things you teach. Like drones are accessible enough, augmented reality is accessible enough, and the computer vision. And, just to jump right into it, seeing the video of you, controlling your drone with your hand signals and body signals and stuff like
yeah,
putting
it down.
It's so cool.
Some people thought I look like a cheerleader just putting my hands up like that.
Your like body controlled drone forces you to be a cheerleader. That's funny. So I like to jump immediately into like the why, right? Like I think that's the most important part. It's fascinating. So like why do you do what you do? Like what got you into this, and most importantly, like what is your mission?
So it's a long story, but let me just take you through it. So I got started out a long time ago. I was just fresh out of university. I wanted to get a job, and I'm like, okay, how do I get a job? Because there's a huge gap between just like the skills that you learn in university versus what people expect you to have already known when you start a job. So a lot of things that I had to do was to learn on my own. And I found like the best way to learn was by teaching people. And that came a bit later, but the first thing that I wanted to do was the challenges that I faced in getting up to scratch at work. That was a lot to just just to get from point A to point B. But so what I did was, instead of documenting things like a normal person in Word or in LaTeX or something, I preferred recording sort of like a tutorial for myself. So I recorded a bunch of them, and I was like, what happens if my computer gets damaged? So then I was like, okay, let me just upload it to YouTube. I mean, it's a free platform. I can always refer back to it and stuff like that. And then I did make it public. So what I noticed was that a lot of people were also facing the same challenges I did, like getting things up and running, how to do this, how to do that. So what came from like a couple of views to tens of views to hundreds, thousands. And right now I've reached around 7.6 million views just on my YouTube channel alone, which is quite enormous and satisfying. That was great. But I still do enjoy teaching, helping people through the problems that I faced in my own daily challenges in development, not only in like computer vision, but also in like PCB design, which I started off with first. Yeah, so that's the way it all began.
That's awesome. I love that origin story. Like, what you have these problems, you document them. And I like the description too. I feel like it always takes a little bit of crazy to add some value to the world. You're like, not like a normal person who would just take notes. Like I make videos and upload them, and to discover that, so many folks need that. It's funny because it takes the doing, right? Like you did that, you uploaded it, and then it happened. Like you recorded the videos. So many times in my life, like we interviewed SparkFun in here, I just didn't do it, right? I remember thinking in college, I was like, I'm an electrical engineer, studied electrical engineering in college. And I remember thinking, it's like, why is it so hard to get development boards? Like it just shouldn't be that hard. Like I feel like that's a solvable problem too. And around the time I was thinking that, I didn't do anything about solving the problem, right? But Nathan Seidel at SparkFun was like, yeah, I'm going to solve that problem. And he just went and, very similar story where he's like, he just bought a bunch of development boards at the minimum or at the quantities you had to, which was like hundreds, and then just put them on the internet. So they had great photos and easy to buy.
And just make it more accessible to everyone.
Yeah. Just make it more accessible. And so it's cool that it's, everyone, so many people have those pain points like you did. Very few are willing, and myself included, are willing to go like make the thing. So that's cool. I love that journey. And you only discovered that because you did it. So what would you say are your biggest challenges that you face along this journey?
The biggest challenge that I find, not only for me, but for others as well, is just getting started. Say if you're coming from a computer science background or software development background, that you need to, if you want to get something like, say, license plate detection working, you just go to GitHub, download that, and then implement it, run it on your computer, whatever. But I found that a lot of people don't have the computer science background or engineering background or whatnot. Some people coming, I actually have people coming from like medicine and people coming from finance that are doing this for the first time. Now, it's funny enough, like they don't really know what GitHub is or how to download GitHub code. To me and you, it's like second nature to go straight to GitHub and download the code and stuff like that. So keeping that in mind, what I want to do is to make it as easy as possible for people to not only get it up and running, getting the GitHub code, downloading it, modifying it, how to run it, for example, but also installing dependencies. From my survey, I found that around, say, 86% of my viewers are on Windows. And we all know how difficult it is to install any type of software package on Windows compared to like Ubuntu, for example. So I cater for people who are just getting started, people having troubles installing CUDA. CUDA is can be quite a headache to install on just different platforms. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and that's extremely valuable. I've probably talked about this too much, but it's all about lowering that barrier to entry. And so I think that's hugely valiant. It's something that we want to get better at as well. And we've run into those headaches on Windows, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's how do you make that and how do you make that easy and quick developer experience? And how do you minimize the time between like, I come from this background. Let's take Sparkman, for example. He was a tap dancer, right? How do I come from that to like actually getting something running? And how do you minimize that so that folks have the satisfaction of actually having accomplished something other than just, fighting dependencies for 4 days?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I get for me, it's a big challenge when tells you, okay, module is missing, and then you go to Stack Overflow and you're like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. Just a simple pip install this, pip install that. A lot of people don't know that that is the way to do.
Yeah, and even these days, that was an epiphany for me. It's like I was used to programming like in college, and there weren't those resources. Like none of them were invented, right? So when something didn't work, you just had to like either just poke at it until you eventually discovered what wasn't working, or you had to like go walk to your local smart person and see if they knew the answer, see if they could help you. But yeah, that's like my journey in perception. The first thing I tried to do is train, I think it was YOLO V3. And I remember like, I even took like, I found my local smart person and I was like, why are none of the versions working? Like, in one virtual environment, another virtual environment, it's like conflicting and passing through. And I remember I think I spent a solid week of like obsessive, frustrated, like 16-hour days just to get like the development environment set up. And then I had like 5 hard drives because like I would just try on like one OS to another, and like I didn't want to have like any virtual layers or anything like that. And so I was just running through the whole thing just to get YOLO training. This was in like early 2018 or something. And I'm very bad at it. But
I think I only came up with my tutorials only in 2019 on YOLO V3.
yeah. And it was like just stupid mistakes, right? Like misunderstanding how pip was running and so forth. But like, that I was hell bent on doing it, right? I was willing to spend a week of 12-hour days, but it almost broke me, right? And for someone who's less hell bent on making that run, that just becomes a barrier to entry and prevents them from innovating. So I think what you're doing with simplifying and education and so forth is extremely important. So I talked a little bit about, my journey in perception, which was literally like, I want to learn how to train something for the first time. Can you talk a bit about perception on drones? Like, your journey there, what have you tried? What worked? What doesn't?
So building drones, I came like from scratch, say from the start of the year. What actually helped was getting a kit and course from this company called the Drone Dojo. That's how I learned how to get everything up and running, connect my Raspberry Pi and stuff like that. There were a few things that I missed in terms of calibrating your drone's motors. So what happened there was I was flying it for the first time. It was bouncing up and down, on the verge of flying, thinking that it'll work. Then I went full throttle, like, not full throttle, maybe 3/4. And the drone just like toppled from one side to the other, and until it just like toppled over. I'm like, shit, something's wrong here. And eventually I started seeing smoke coming from, like, oh God, I was just panicking, running around like a mad monkey until I found a fire extinguisher, extinguished the flames or whatever smoking. And that was actually not a really great decision because I should have just doused one of the speed controllers that went on fire. The whole drone was like doused in fire extinguisher powder. You know how difficult that is to clean.
Yeah.
And from there, I met with a local expert. He told me what I needed to know in terms of, okay, you have to calibrate your electronic speed controllers because if you give full throttle, you're going to give too much power to the motors and then it's not going to be equal. You're not going to get that lift. That was just one of the challenges from there. This isn't just flying the drone, but now in linking up computer vision to a drone that I have, it would have been a big mission because programming everything on a Raspberry Pi, and now you need that processing power. It just happened so that I use the OpenCV AI Kit for this purpose. You can see I just have my drone in the shot there. You can see the OAK one right over there.
Love
I
it.
linked it up to the Raspberry Pi. That is the host currently. And it actually worked quite well in terms of like getting it up flying. Most of the computer vision load was done by the OAK. That just simplified a lot of things rather than using something like the Intel Movidius neural compute stick, which I knew like very basic about.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I actually started with the NCS, which is what allowed me to prototype the first thing I was trying to build. What I discovered, exactly what you're talking about on the Raspberry Pi, is that there's a lot of load to the host because if you're using a Pi camera, then all the imagery has to come in through the host, be decimated and resized and reformatted by the Pi itself, and then fed into the NCS. While Intel chip that's in the NCS, which is what we use in the OpenCV AI Kit, can handle the cameras directly. And so it's like you've got like source of a ton of data, the thing that needs to process it, and this poor Pi being crushed by it in the middle. Whereas
and you want to run other scripts
just,
that must control the drone itself. You don't want to be running a computer vision stack there while you're controlling the drone in midair. It's not very safe.
Yeah, exactly. And so the whole premise of the OpenCV AI Kit is to take this whole source of data, the chip that can process it really well, tie those together in a little package, the OAK one, for example, that you show there, and then just get what you need out to the Pi, right? Like your example is super cool because you're using the metadata and then you're running an additional tracker on that. And then it's following you and looking at hand signals and stuff. And I think, that would be a lot harder to pull off. I was not able to pull it off, at least when, the Pi has to be the center handling all the high frame rate video because it just overwhelms it. And then you can't run the additional business logic you want. So, fundamentally,
as you mentioned, that like just getting that part working alone is terrible. I have worked with the Pi camera, and just to get everything smoothly working was a challenge. But I found out with the OAK, especially with the OAK one, like just getting the stuff running. I used just simple object detection, but I felt like that I could have done it a little bit better, like using pose estimation as opposed to like object detection. But those are one of the lessons that you learn along the way in terms of building these types of things. And you guys already have all of the stacks. So if I want to swap something out for another, you can't run pose estimation on a Raspberry Pi and expect it to work very smoothly, but you can run it on an OAK.
Yeah. And thanks to, the open source community and the collaboration there for making that a lot better. That's one of the things I'm most excited about. Like we ran pose estimation and on OAK, and I don't remember, it was like 6 or 7 frames per second. And then the open source community took it and said like, well, that's bad. Like this hardware is better than that. Why don't you run these models? And so like Geeks, for example, and Cordic together and in several others then made some, 30 frame per second pose estimators. But it's great to start somewhere, right? Start with the object detector, make it run, and then you can always improve it from there. And recently, even Geeks took an object detector and then fed it with pose estimator and hand pose so that it can like find you first, and then it'll find like where your hand is. And then from there, once it finds the hand, it'll track the hand so you can do hand signals. So fundamentally, you're building a complicated robot. Like this is what it comes down to. And Kat at Open Robotics put it well when she said, education in robotics is hard. And I think your example of a smoking motor controller and having to clean all the, fire retardant off of a drone is a perfect example why, education in robotics is hard right now. You're dealing with a physical thing they can literally go up in fire, like in flames, right? So,
Not only that, the
how do you,
propellers can also fly into your face if not
yeah,
careful.
yeah, exactly. I saw recently, and maybe this will be worth for beginners, like a little like I don't even remember where I saw it, but there was like a drone cage, which is like so you can like your drone can bounce off of you and not actually hurt you. I'm sure that messes with flight dynamics though. So how do you see what you're doing impacting education in this next generation of folks who want to take this journey of building something like this?
Going back to what I said about the gap between what you learn in university versus what's expected of you in the job market, I want to try and bridge that gap. So I look at what people are doing online. Are they working with drones? What are they using drones for? Or what are they using the robots for? What people are creating with certain platforms. So I look at the scope of what's currently out there and I say, okay, can I bridge that gap for people who are just fresh out of university, or maybe you already been a senior developer for some time, but you want to upgrade your skills as maybe with some drone technology to put under your portfolio of things, of skills that you can do. So I want to try and make sure that that gap is filled, and by transferring my knowledge that I've learned to other people to show them how to do it, what not to do, how not to get killed by a drone, not only drones, but also other technology, how to use it ethically, how to fly a drone responsibly. Those are the things that no one tells you to how to do or what to do. So the place where I come in is taking what I've learned, packaging it with other things that are relevant to what you need to know in order to fly a drone, because anyone can go and buy a kit, fly it around and that, but maybe you're flying it near an airport and you're basically going against regulation, which forbids you from doing that. So from there, I decided to put together sort of like a workshop on that.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's one of the hard things about when you start doing the thing. I mean, to quote Chip Gaines, not in this industry at all. He does remodeling, but he has this whole empire, right? It's that
Mm-hmm.
you have to start, and you don't have to know all the answers when you start, but you just have to start, and then you find them along the way. And having that as a resource is so important because people could get themselves in a world of trouble, right? Not knowing those things, and so having a resource to go to is in that is your whole mission, right? Is to bridge that gap, and then you're allowing folks to do that. So to circle it all back, how do you see OAK-D Lite fitting in this mission?
So I have a bunch of ideas currently. So the first thing that I did was I used the OAK One for my applications, but I was being not so smart because I used the OAK One without its case, and at the time the grass in my garden was a little bit wet, so the oak actually stopped working due to water damage. And then from there I had to use this one here, the OAK-D, the original OAK-D. The problem was with this one here is that on the drone, if you mounting it like somewhere up close over here, it's going to tilt your drone in terms of the center of gravity more towards the front rather than the back. I could have mounted it here, but there's a lot of wires here. The only logical place was say around here or underneath. And because of its weight, it was a bit tricky to get the drone to fly stably. There's a lot of tuning that I had to do in order to do that. So the plan with the OAK-D is, number one, just mounting this little light module that you've guys provided. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
but
it's cool to
if I
see
had
it.
to, yeah, if I had to implement it, I'll probably put it like somewhere around here. Replace the OAK One with this, add in some pose estimation instead of object detection, and use the depth cameras to estimate the depth towards me. So I can not only do like your following of the drone, but also like distance following along various axes of freedom.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's, thanks to feedback from you specifically and others, that's why OAK-D Lite exists, right? Is like we had those conversations in the Discord, both your Discord augmented startups and Luxonis/OpenCV. Just like it's too heavy, right? Like I want to use it, but it's too heavy. I can't. I have to put the OAK One on because it's the light enough thing. I actually don't know the comparative weights, but just feeling them, I actually think they're very, very similar. But yeah, I'm super excited.
I think I also want to do like a weight test, put it on my kitchen scale and see the relative differences between them.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it live. I've got a jewelry scale here. I want to know. I think
Okay.
the audience will want to know too, and then we can put it in the
Yep.
Kickstarter. Okay. So Oak One is doing it live, 1.87 ounces, and OAK-D Lite is 2.16 ounces. So it's about
Sure.
zero point 0.2 or so ounces heavier. Well, actually, no, it's more than that. Well, everyone would be able to know that I'm not able to do math. Oh, it's pretty close. Yeah, 0.3 ounces. So it's very, very similar in weight. Whereas, let's
I'll
see
need
if
to
I have an
convert
oak.
it into grams on my side.
Yeah, yeah. And
You know,
actually, here we go.
imperial versus metric system.
Yeah. So I'll do that again. So what is GN? Is that grams? Oh, here,
Just
hold
G's
on.
grams.
Yeah, here we go. So OAK-D is 123 grams.
Okay.
OAK-D Lite is 61 grams.
Wow.
And then Oak One is 54 grams. So it's
Okay.
barely heavier than Oak One.
Yeah.
But it
You're testing
actually
it with
distributes.
enclosures as well.
Yes. Yeah. So that is actually with enclosures. So here's
Okay.
the got the bokeh effect on to give everyone the size of scale. Here's Oak
Mm-hmm.
One, and then here's OAK-D. And the main thing is, so it's smaller height wise, but it's also just a ton thinner, which
Yeah.
was us figuring out how to do better thermal design.
It makes
So
it
anyway,
also much more easier to fit on my drone because like if to fit this one on, like, okay, it sort of goes in like that, but you know,
yeah,
the weight and all that, it's a bit tricky. And
yeah,
also, if you're dealing with vibrations on drones, it's quite bad. And if you got this heavy thing, it just makes it even more wobbly. But if you
yeah,
have something light like the OAK-D Lite or even the Oak One, I think it minimizes those sorts of problems.
yeah, absolutely. So I want to thank you again for all the tutorials you put out, showing people how to build things. It's very exciting, helping us improve the whole Oak line. Being a key part to the inspiration on this. And to close, I'd love to recommend folks, if you're interested in drones, check out Augmented Startups. Check out all the things you can build, the kits there. And then also, I'd like to ask, do you have any advice for anyone watching this video?
So, advice, if you're struggling with computer vision, obviously there's platforms that you can use that make it easier, but I focus mostly on making computer vision easy. If you want to learn certain applications, I'm currently busy on my YOLO R course, making object detection with YOLO R easier and simpler to use, building different types of applications. Hopefully, you guys will also bring YOLO R or maybe YOLO X or some light version to the OAK-D. I'll probably definitely try that out. Other than that, if you want to learn how to build drones and build a computer vision drone from scratch, I am running a workshop. I'll probably have a sign up link somewhere on this page or down below where you can sign up for a live cohort based workshop. And this workshop will allow you to not only learn how to build a drone, but also flight responsibly, how to program the Raspberry Pi using Python to communicate with the drone, link the OpenCV AI Kit. Most likely it will be this one here that you'll use in order to perform computer vision tasks like on the drone itself, program it, train it, stuff like that, and also miscellaneous stuff like troubleshooting your drone, flying it responsibly, as I mentioned, and optimizing certain parameters that are quite important. So yeah, that's the advice I have to give.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks again for joining today, and just really looking forward to seeing the creative things that folks build with your tutorials and piecing this all together to make it easy.
Definitely. There's already a plethora of things that are already out there that you can start doing with Oak. I'm like quite impressed, like out of the box, you're getting this Oak, but not only this, you're getting all of the applications that come with it that you can build on. So looking forward to also taking this further as well in my own research.
Awesome.